Hey everyone, welcome to The Grind. Today we're talking about the third week of the series The Miracle. Keith shared a really powerful message over the weekend.
Not this one.
Not this one.
Clarify, just to clarify.
Keith Welch, Mr. Keith
Yes.
Welch.
Yes.
Shared a powerful message, and we're just gonna get right to just talking a little bit about it, unpacking it, and what it means for us. And so the one thing that he talked about was how do you engage with a world that keeps changing, and he's talking about how back during his time, flannel pants are pajamas, and today people are just wearing it out and about, which is kind of funny how actually fashion trends repeat itself. So I'm like, maybe I should have saved everything that I wore in high school, and then in 10 years, actually, if I've saved all my bucket hats and my bell bottoms, I would be yes, quite popping.
That's what I was gonna say. The return of bell-bottom jeans.
No.
And baggy jeans and white leg. I thought that era died, but I guess it's revived. 80s is not popular. Anyways, yeah. So I know there are challenges to also engage with the world that we live in. So let's maybe talk a little bit about our own challenges. Have we faced any challenges engaging the world that we live in?
Same like Keith. I almost said Uncle Keith because he was my teacher.
Well, I mean, yeah, he was Uncle Keith to some of us, yes.
He has this talked about the trend about the pants. I think for me is in the same way. I think one of my struggles is FOMO, fear of missing out. You always gotta keep up with culture, knowing, seeing all the shows. And I have this thing called I heard this before, but I can't remember where. But it's like geek duty. Geek duty. So I'm a geek, therefore I should be up to date with all the comic book. I'm a geek, so I need to watch all the Marvel movies.
That doesn't
even
sound
though
like
it's
FOMO.
bad.
That just sounds like peer pressure.
Yeah, it is basically. So but then I would say it's under FOMO, and I think that's something that I kind of pressured myself to try and keep up. Yeah. So in other words, conform. That's what I'm doing.
Okay, conform. So I have no backbone. Got it.
Yeah. Well, similarly, I think it's very difficult to stay consistent in a world that's changing, and also fear, but not fear of missing out, but fear of new stuff. And you try to block the changes in the world, like AI. Oh no, we shouldn't use AI. We should protect humans. No, but on the other hand, not every new stuff is improved. If you have you heard of that phrase? And also, to trust in God, even when status and power are important, or at least seemingly important, and also to recognize suffering is real and may not always be a blessing in disguise, but at the same time also knowing that God is also with us and he also suffered.
Yeah. I think this world has its own, I don't know, just different, the topics over the generations that you engage with has changed over time. For example, before, if anyone talks about, say, genders, it's just two. Now it's multiple genders. How do you even navigate around that, right? And then the whole challenge of how kids are allowed to pick their own genders, in the Western world, and then whereas but then they can pick genders at a young age, but then they're not. And then it's before learning how to drive. So it's just issues like that, which hasn't really happened in the Asian world yet. I don't know how it will look like in the Asian context. I don't know. Maybe Asian parents are still too overpowering, and
And Asian context is still saying Merry Christmas rather than Happy Holidays.
Yeah, exactly. I think I first encountered that when I was studying in the States, where they don't say Merry Christmas. Because it's not politically correct or something. So because it doesn't embrace Kwanzaa, Hanukkah, or whatever. So it's just happy holidays. So I think, and also before, if you talk about issues say abortion, people don't know how to talk about that, or LGBT. But now it's just it's all open, and so I feel to engaging in topics like this would be a little bit of a challenge, because growing up was kind of we just don't talk about it. We just put it aside. Now it's it's all out and open. So how do you engage with topics like that? So that I think has been a challenge.
And also the challenge is, now that it's in the open, there is the other side of compulsion that we have to agree with everything that comes up.
Yeah. So then, like you mentioned before, the whole cancel culture, you disagree, canceled, you know? So it's almost like then I know there's then it's like you don't want to be too woke because I think sometimes like the woke people would want their, I might get canceled for this, like they would want and I guess I wouldn't say all woke people because I think some people, they engage in dialogue, right? But then some of them, they just want an echo chamber and then just agree with everything that they say. Hence, if you disagree, then you're canceled. So yes, what a world we live in. Challenging to engage, but that is the reality. And I wonder how Jesus would do things in this day and age if he came to earth like now. So instead of 400 years of silence, it was like 2,000 years of silence and he came. Anyways, we'll never find out. Maybe when we get to heaven, it's like, hey Jesus, how would you have done things had you been on earth in 2024?
Jesus going to youth group and reading out of the Gen Z Bible.
Oh man.
Skibbity.
Oh no. He'll have enough verse to really carry the conversation. And we digress. I cannot. Yeah, that's the one thing I'm challenged with is Gen Z lingo. So, but if anything, so going back to, Jesus and, so how did God engage the world, right? Maybe our challenges with Gen Z language or, just the day and age of like cultural norms or whatever, maybe that was a challenge for many people back 2,000 years ago, dealing with, everything that was going on. So I think like how God engages the world, has evolved over time. In the Old Testament, I guess people in the New Testament are like, oh, those Old Testament people, the way they just...
boomer.
Yeah, exactly, right? Yeah. So something to think about is like, what does wisdom and power of God look like?
I don't know. I want to respond to the lingo thing.
Yeah.
I know Jesus always taught in parables, right?
Yeah.
And he kind of deliberately not let people understand straight away.
So could it be that this Gen Z lingo is
There's
the way?
treasure.
There's treasure. We just have to look. Oh my goodness. Maybe that
You
is.
cracked the code.
You cracked the code. You're right, Jesus. What we thought was folly. Oh my goodness, is this a mind blown right now that Jesus spoke in parables and people didn't understand it, and Gen Z lingo, we don't understand it, and that means there is much wisdom underneath. But yes, you're right. Like Jesus, he spoke in parables, and yeah, some people just, it went over their head. Like Gen Z lingo goes over some people's head. But Jesus, his wisdom came in the form of parables.
Well, to me, God's wisdom and power is actually very counterintuitive.
Yeah.
So he was born in a manger.
Yeah.
And then he entered Jerusalem on a donkey. Like to me, like powerful figures should be grand, majestic.
Mm-hmm.
But somehow he entered this world, at least, in a very humble way. Mm-hmm. Of course, his second return would be glorious, and his place in heaven is glorious. But then the initial encounter with human beings are very humble.
Mm.
Yeah.
I think for me is that when I hear about like wisdom and power, I feel first thing my head goes to is like Solomon's deciding with like the mother and the baby, right? I mean but I think the point being is that he had both he could have gone like the harsh way and like I'm a king, I'm gonna do this and you better obey, but instead he actually took like the wise approach of like trying to like solve kind of the mystery of whose is whose. Yeah, like it's not, as someone big, right, it's so easy and fun to just power through so many things. So that's why when you're able to like take a step back and properly resolve it, right, then that's why I respect.
Yeah. And I also think I also admit that sometimes I think God's way is very weird. So why not just kill Satan at Eden, Garden of Eden?
Oh, that snake stomped.
Yeah.
Done.
And then when Jesus got tempted in the desert, why not just ask Satan to shut up? Why like kindly, politely debate with him, and then why at the judgment day lock him for 1,000 years?
1,000 years. Yeah.
Why 1,000 years? Why not
Forever,
end
never,
him right
even.
now? Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe he thinks it's redemption. I don't know. Yeah, like with the Jews, they were, in their head, they were expecting a Messiah to come, and it was going to be like, I guess an army general. Maybe they're like, oh, they're going to redeem us from the Romans, whatever. And so I think like we think, power is, domineering and everything, and wisdom is like just like knowing the answers to all things and be able to. I think maybe for me, like sometimes wisdom comes in the form of just having all the answers, which technically Jesus does, but sometimes he doesn't answer. He answers a question with a question. I'm like, when people answer a question with a question, I'm like, please, I just want the answer. Like, stop making me like, trying to figure things out. But so what Keith talked about, the wisdom of and power of God, it looked like it started in the form with Mary, asking a virgin, bride who, is about to be betrothed and get married, and is like, hey, by the way, you're gonna be pregnant with a child. Okay, surprise! Christmas miracle, happy Christmas. Except, really, huh? So sometimes God works in our lives in a way that we definitely do not expect, and it's mentioned like, his method, it would be to choose to do things that are counterintuitive to the way that man would do things. So can you remember a time or a circumstance in your life when God orchestrated things differently than you expected?
For me personally, is that I'm someone who always like to create a plan and stick to a plan, I think. And so then you would understand like how much I struggle in terms of like having faith in God's plan and being completely in the unknown of it. And so I had this, and so I tried to always be in this proactive mode, that the moment I'm given an order, I'm like, all right, let's go get on with it, right? So there was a chapter in my life where I was kind of like waiting for direction of God, and the moment God gave me a direction, I'm like, all right, let's go, and I was like, and I was like, let's go. But then what I didn't realize was that this time God wanted me to slow down. He actually wanted me to like actually appreciate the slowness. I feel that was being highlighted, that I always am so used to doing things immediately and doing things so fast. He wanted me to slow down because he wanted to prepare me. I think like the best way I could describe this is like if my parents say, hey, I need to buy carrots from the supermarket. I'm like, oh, carrots, let's go. And I just bolt out the door. I'm like, and then my parents like, hey, you forgot the cash, So I feel that that's kind of like where I am, that God gave me a command and I was like, all right, let's go. But then like he took a different approach where he was like, no, I want you to go, but not yet. I want to train you. And so that was something God has been doing for me. Yeah.
For me, this job is a time that I really didn't expect. Because at first, actually, my girlfriend was seriously considering full-time ministry.
Oh, okay.
Instead of me. And I wasn't very interested in working in church, and especially in two occasions. Some of my friends said something about working in the church is it's very, in Cantonese we say lei day.
What's that mean?
So it's like you're really not close to the ground, so you're kind of not connected to the real community or the real common people.
Okay.
And then the other label is like, oh, are you trying to escape something? Trying to escape real work. I'm not saying they are 100% right, but I'm just repeating what they said. And and then a third friend teased that, oh, you study so much, but you end up manning PA systems. PA systems meaning that the speakers and the mics. and I always think about this. But at the same time, it is not really that different from my wishes, because I did pray for a stable job, and a job that is somewhat interesting and aligned with my interests. So I do enjoy it, but it's not really something that I expected.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think, yeah, likewise, it's just like work for me too, you know, like again, being in ministry is not what I expected to do, right? And like I've always had an interest in creative media, and that's something that I wanted to pursue, like graphic design, but then I didn't end up pursuing it and ended up going down a route completely in a field of education that I didn't expect myself to go down. Like, who would have thought that I started off as a pre-engineer? That was my humble beginnings as a pre-engineer.
Astronaut pet.
Or that, yeah. So, but then the thing is, like, it's interesting how, like, you know, my desire or my interest in creative media is, you know, being fulfilled and met years later in ministry context. Like that, I mean, that's just definitely God orchestrating that, because given my background, I shouldn't necessarily be in a job that does like creative media. And also, I think, like, when I said, like, to God, like, hey, I want to do all like that I can for you while I'm still young, God's like, seems like God's like, all right, here we go. So it's, again, be careful what you pray.
Yeah.
Not be careful. I think it's sometimes what you ask for, you might expect it to pan out in a certain way, but God can just, you know, work around it and, you know, just make things happen without you expecting or realizing it. Going back to, you know, the other week when we were talking about God's sovereignty and how he orchestrates everything. So, yeah, so again, like, sometimes when we try to wrap our, like, something that was also, like, you know, like, kind of like processing recently is that, you know, when you try to wrap your mind around the, you know, like, why things happen a certain way, or why is God doing this, or why is this happening in my life, you never, like, your brain will just be, like, blown. All right, so the thing is, like, you know, when no matter how much wisdom or power that God is showing, like, we will definitely miss it if we approach it with worldly wisdom. So we basically, like, when we talk about, like, the different responses highlighted in this in the message, right, like, to the gospel, the Jews demanded a sign, the Greeks, you know, they wanted, like, logic, seeking wisdom. Like, how do you personally connect with the message of Christ?
I'm connected to truths. So that's why I like Interior Chinatown,
Yeah.
and so or Detective Conan or Sherlock Holmes, this
Yeah.
kind of mystery / thriller stories, because I really want to know what happened, what's real, and so I connect with the message of Christ in the way that it is the most outrageous but also most simple and convincing claim of truth. And so, but also I could be clouded by my family's faith already, and will be destroyed by atheist arguments. so I'm not sure. Yeah.
I think for me it's why I want to repeat what I said before in the previous grind, that I think what I'm getting from this is that God is so intentional. You know, as someone who likes to play video games, we have this term called Easter eggs. You know, that, well, what it is that it's a reference put that's referencing something from the past. So I guess for us gamers and people who enjoy pop cultures and movies, they're hiding secrets in there. And that's why I really like the Bible verse. It's the glory of God to conceal a matter, and it's the glory of kings to seek it out. So I think that's why I really like that God is so intentional. I guess in the same way of, like, what you said, that he tends to, like, I don't know, and you said, like, the mystery Sherlock Holmes, whatever you said, yeah. He's so intentional, and I like this one scene from the second Narnia films. There was one part where it was like Lucy was asking Aslan, like, "Oh, how come you didn't save us like you did before?" And I think that the quote was something like,
"Things never happen the same way twice, dear one."
That speaks to me because my human brain likes to make things into a formula. Like, just because A happened, therefore in the future I'm expecting A. You know, but then God's like, no, I'm not gonna do A, I'm probably gonna do B, and then the next time I'm even gonna do C. But he's so intentional with these, so that's what I really like about that.
Yeah, I think like growing up, I like again, maybe brainwashed by Sunday school. You just believe that your God is the way, the truth, and the life. And I think I connected more to the message of Christ when I understood who he is. When I understood that, I think the key thing was knowing the nature and character of God, understanding his father heart. And I think that's when I really connected and it became so real to me. So looking beyond like the great miracles that he did, I don't think I was really blown away by the miracles, yes, it was not saying that it's not important. It was very important, all his miracles healing the sick and all that stuff. But I think what probably I connected with the most is just who he is and the love that he showed for us. And like I said, I'm not normally a very emotional person, but I think when seeing or knowing that Jesus died on the cross and bore our sins for someone who's like insignificant like me, I think that really broke me in a good way. So I think that's how I connected with the message of Christ. So I think when it comes to God, I had questions about the Bible growing up, which honestly some were not satisfactorily answered, and I've just kind of laid it down to sleep. And then I also wanted signs to hey, if you're real, show this, and sometimes he does show up in the form of signs, but sometimes he would say I've spoken to you clearly, you can hear my voice, you don't need a sign, right? In that sense. So yeah, I think it's just that connection of knowing the person, who God is. I think that really connects with me. So obviously we all have our own relationship with God and connecting with him, but what do you think would be the main challenges that people would face with the message of Christ?
I guess it would be one of those unanswered questions.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And so things like a loving God punishes people and allows suffering to persist.
Yeah.
And also a loving God kills his own son.
Yeah.
And people think that God's command are restrictive or God's salvation is so forceful or so limited. Why do we have to only believe in one God to get saved? Yeah,
can there be multiple options, that kind of thing. I think that would be some of the challenges. Or even biology teaches us that a sperm and egg needs to meet for a child to be birthed. How can someone who's a virgin give birth? That.
Yeah.
I don't really have a specific one kind of way, like how you've shared yours. I think for me is one struggle is that people are living in the past. I think the most popular line, we were sinners saved by grace, right? And that we've progressed, that we're not sinners anymore, we're saints. But then some people still stay in that sinner phase, I feel.
Yeah, it is not our nature, because we've been saved by grace. Yes, we do mess up, and we can sin. Not saying that we're going to be completely perfect, after we're saved, but it's more do we have a heart that repents and turns back to God? Yeah. Now, one thing that was brought up is that humility is super important when God called us. I don't think if Mary wasn't a humble woman, I don't think God would use her to birth his child, right? So humility is important when it comes to God's calling on our lives. So how do we cultivate a posture of humility in our lives and communities? What does it look like to have humility in a culture that values status and power? That often values status and power.
I can't answer that because I haven't gotten power and status.
Let me
know when you get there, Ben.
What are you talking about? Because in Asian culture, I guess it's all. I wouldn't say it's all about, but I think obviously it's you have to be mean to people, right? It's all about face. Right? You have to say certain things and call people. I don't know. My parents were hey, why didn't you call the auntie? I was like, call what? Hello auntie, hello uncle, what give I was like, oh hello, I mean I think it's definitely a lot about face and thing and then there's that, but then there's also the challenges of false humility as well.
In general, to other people, especially the people that annoys you, I just try to remember that we all come from dust, and God made us. And nowadays it's very I have this very vivid image. It's like a CG effect in films where you film like a street and people walking by, and you have this CG label of everyone, and everyone's label says made by God. And all your prejudice and all your criticism of this person's appearance, his temper, her whatever.
Yeah.
And then I look at the label, oh, made by God. And I'm probably as annoying, as bad as other people.
Yeah.
Well, initially I was gonna say like be malleable, like for God's doing, like in the example I shared, that don't make formulas, don't think how God's gonna approach it. You probably won't even know his methods. But then like in response to like people in powerful position, honestly, in a healthy way, suck it up. Because I have talked with relatives, and they've shared how the kind of like bosses that they had, and when they talk, they just sound so they're taking so much offense, which kind of recalls me to this one teaching that I heard here in ICA, where it was like the best thing to do with offense, don't take it. Easier said than done. Yeah. But then that I tried applying that. Like I still take offense, but then I still like catch it, you know. I don't let it like a seed sit in me and then like sprout into anger, you know. I try to healthily deal with it. And so whenever I take the offense and I receive it, I get hurt, but you know, pass it on to God. Don't let it just, don't plant it and bear bad fruit. Like that's just silly.
Yeah. Like going back to the whole false humility thing, I think it's very Asian to be like, oh no, it's okay, like, oh no, it's not about me, it's about you know, and but then, you know, humility is not thinking less of yourself, but thinking of yourself less.
Just because that sentence is symmetrical doesn't make it not nonsense.
And so I think is, acknowledge that, you know, the things that you've done and everything, but obviously like don't put yourself on like, you know, the high pedestal, like, oh look at me, I'm so great, blah, 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 you know, and like, you know, I think the key thing is like when you start thinking that you're better than other people, you need a pride check. So, and yeah, if you already think you're better than you know the ways, like things, and you know that you're above, you know, people, very unlikely God is going to use you. So when we say like God uses as you will, but if you refuse to be humble, then how is God going to use you? Yeah, but then the thing is like sometimes the worldly wisdom will be like, oh, you must put yourself here, you know, in order to be used there, to make the right connections. But sometimes like God isn't looking at your status, he isn't looking at your power, he's not looking at like what you can offer, he's just looking at you and your whether or not you're going to say yes to him.
I'm curious, do we have to be used by God? And what are the consequences of not being used by God? Because I always hear one of my friends say, oh, I'm gonna be the least hardworking member of the Christian community, and I'm fine with that.
That's some low aspirations in life, but also sounds like an enjoyable one. I don't know, because I think when people think that they're being used by God, maybe they're thinking like, you know, big things and, you know, huge aspirations. I mean, I think the way I see like being used by God is it doesn't even have to be like, you know, preaching or teaching or you know, or being in church. I think it's just the act of kindness, the act of love that you show to your neighbor. I think that's being used by God. That if you're encountering, you know, if you're bringing an account of God's goodness to people, I think that's being used by God. I think people have it in their mind that it's like some big scale thing.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, and maybe there is a season that God will not use you. I highly doubt that God did anything through me in my primary school / high school years. Maybe small things, but like I wasn't like, yes, I'm Blaze Smith, you know? Like I was in the background, so I'm cool. Yeah. But I don't know, I feel like there are seasons in life where you might just need to take a back seat and other people step in. But I think every day is just God can use you, just not in a way that you expect, as in, God works in a way. But that's a good question though.
Yeah, I'd agree that perhaps there are ways of serving that they didn't realize that they're actually serving, I guess.
Yeah.
But then, like, if you really want to go, like to answer the question, you really got me thinking. That was actually it's a nice like tickle to my brain. I think that you can. I think it's okay if you live a life where you don't even serve God at least once. But at the same time, I think you really limit your options. I feel it's the same thing as like you're you value life and you're too scared to go out, so you lock yourself in. It's like that kind of movie stereotype, right? I feel it's the same thing that like I think the most important thing is that you love God, right? And I think that's the bottom line. And being of service to Him is just
it's a natural
a bonus. Response. Yeah.
Like ultimately, I think because you love God, that you just can't help but like serve Him. So that in a way, it's almost like automatic, right? It's not like you love God. That's it. I'm giving this love of Jesus to myself. Like it overflows out of you. So. Yeah.
I will say though, I'm now thinking about the parable about the talents. How like the one guy took his one talent, dug in the hole, and said, "Hey, master, look, I kept it safe." And the master said,
"Let me take it and go. Let me take it and go."
I think, yeah.
Yeah, I had this friend like he has this like I have this friend. He basically is like pretty like how do I say just does things like he's like a mind of his own. So if he doesn't want to do it, he doesn't do it. Like, oh, okay, 5:30, I'm out. He's not like I'm going to stay on. Like, hey, you told me that I can leave at 5:30, so I want to leave. Like he's not like trying to work the ladder or he's basically who he is who he is. There's no hidden thing. Like he would like that's dumb. That's great. He just lives lives as it is. And the thing is, he's not asking for it, but he gets promoted. He's like, I didn't do anything for promotion. Like, what? So it's actually so funny. It's like sometimes, yeah, it's just, if you're living in Christ, like sometimes it just draws people or draws, situations where you are going to be used to bless people. You just never know. So, but yeah, bottom line is humility. And know that God is a great call in your life, even though sometimes you don't feel it, but He does a great call in your life. All right. Well, that's that for today. Thank you so much for joining us, and we will catch you at our next grind. Bye.
Bye.